absolutely beautiful. Now, let's talk about video. Our Pro models already lead the way in smartphone video. To match our quality, format support, and seamless integration in professional workflows, we have to look to dedicated Pro camera systems. No other smartphone comes close. We're even filming this event with iPhone 17 Pro. How cool is that? Amazing Pro features like Dolby Vision HDR, 4K 120, ProRes log, and support for ACES have been loved by filmmakers who also love how iPhone allows them to be closer to their subjects, more intimate, more nimble, and more flexible. This year, we're bringing some of our most requested Pro video features, allowing iPhone to integrate even more seamlessly into the largest and smallest of productions. We're adding support for ProRes RAW capture, which is the industry-leading Apple-developed video codec that records all of the information captured by the camera sensor to provide unparalleled flexibility in post-production. It's ideal for high dynamic range video, and since we introduced it, it has become the industry standard for productions requiring the highest level of control and quality. ProRes RAW capture is supported by Final Cut Camera and Blackmagic Camera, and APIs are available for other developers. We're also adding support for Genlock, which enables super precise video synchronization. It's particularly useful for content creators and streamers. Whether using multiple cameras or on-screen graphics, Genlock allows for accurate and professional-looking transitions without hours of manual frame-by-frame alignment. When using an array of cameras, Genlock enables advanced filmmaking tools and techniques like time splicing or bullet time, which allows filmmakers to change the audience perspective while freezing time. Genlock is supported via the new Blackmagic Camera Pro Dock, and we have APIs available for others as well. We're thrilled to bring these advanced filmmaking tools to iPhone, making them more affordable and approachable. iPhone 17 Pro truly sets a new standard. And to complete the experience, we've also designed a range of new accessories. We're introducing our Tech Woven case with a new innovative material. This woven textile is crafted with a technical process that uses multiple yarn colors to create a sophisticated look, while protective coating provides a resistance to scratches and stains. We also have clear cases, as well as a great selection of colors and silicone. All of our cases feature a new button design that feels even better and more precise than before. The beautiful and functional crossbody strap that you saw with iPhone Air is designed to pair with tech woven cases for iPhone 17 Pro and 17 Pro Max, as well as silicone cases for all iPhone 17 models. So that's iPhone 17 Pro, by far the most powerful and versatile iPhone we've ever made. This is a huge upgrade, featuring a stunning design and powered by A19 Pro for our best performance ever. It also delivers an enormous leap in battery life. All 48 megapixel fusion cameras on the back and 8x zoom, along with our innovative center stage camera on the front. Plus, it supports the latest features in iOS 26, Apple Intelligence, and so much more. Let's see the iPhone 17 Pro in action.
¡Qué locura! ¡Qué naranja te jode, tío!
This is, without question, our best iPhone lineup ever. All the new models will start with 256 gigabytes of storage, giving you more room for your photos, videos, apps, and memories. iPhone 17 starts at $799, keeping the same great price. iPhone Air starts at $999, and iPhone 17 Pro starts at $1099. The same great price as last year's 256GB iPhone 16 Pro. And for the first time, a 2TB configuration is available on iPhone 17 Pro Max. We also have amazing offers from Apple and our partners. You can get up to $1,100 off when you trade in an iPhone 13 Pro or newer in any condition. And the iPhone lineup starts at just $599 with iPhone 16e. Pre-orders for all new models start this Friday edition. And the iPhone lineup starts at the same great price as last year's 256GB iPhone 16 Pro. And for the first time, a 2TB configuration is available on iPhone 17 Pro Max. The same great price starts at $799, keeping the same great price. iPhone Air starts at $999. And iPhone 17 Pro starts at $1099. The same great price as last year's 256GB iPhone 16 Pro. And for the first time, a 2TB configuration is available on iPhone 17 Pro Max. We also have amazing offers from Apple and our partners. You can get up to $1,100 off when you trade in an iPhone 13 Pro or newer in any condition. And the iPhone lineup starts at just $599 with iPhone 16. Pre-orders for all new models start this Friday, and they will be available starting September 19th. And now, back to Tim.
These iPhone 17 Pro models are the most advanced Pro models we've ever created. And this new iPhone lineup represents the biggest leap ever for iPhone. The products and innovations we introduce today, along with the power of Apple Intelligence, will enrich people's lives in so many ways. It reflects our deep commitment to designing industry-leading products and experiences. Because we've always believed that when something is designed with great care, with absolute attention to every detail, every material, technology, and interaction, that the result can impact our lives in powerful and profound ways and change the world for the better. Thank you very much for joining us. Have a great day.
They say the Baltic is a sea. For us, it's a symbol of flow and change. Like every woman's journey. Whether you're leading a meeting, preparing for a new life, or taking a quiet moment, Baltic Born moves with you, designed for strength and softness. For busy days and peaceful nights. Versatile style for every part of your life. Feel it all, be it all. Find your moment at BalticBoard.com.
Being said, there are some archaeological finds that might represent two individuals in same-sex relationships. But, as with many things in archaeology, it's hard to know for sure. Dendra Lightbulb. This is a stone
¿Qué acabo de hacer, hermano?
Hathor, vaguely resembling a modern light bulb. The relief is actually a depiction of a scene out of Egyptian mythology, involving a serpent emerging from a rage fire. The nearby hieroglyphics confirm this interpretation. Scooby-Doo Love refers to these really amazing Greek terracotta vases made in the shape of realistic dog heads. The Hobby Lobby smuggling scandal. Whoa boy, this is quite the doozy. Okay, so starting around 2009, representatives of the popular arts and crafts store chain Hobby Lobby, you know that store your grandma gets her Minion stickers and scented candles from, purchased $1.6 million worth of ancient Iraqi artifacts from dealers in the United Arab Emirates, literally thousands of Mesopotamian cuneiform tablets and cylinder seals. The evangelical Christian Green family, the owners of Hobby Lobby, wish to put many of these artifacts on display in their Museum of the Bible, a museum that has often been criticized for its, let's just say, lenient views towards historical accuracy. Now, you might be wondering how these artifacts from Iraq ended up in a completely different country. And I'm happy you wondered that, because Hobby Lobby allegedly sure as heck didn't. As it happens, the majority of the items lack much, if any, supporting documentation of their past ownership, which is crucial to ensuring an artifact was obtained legitimately, and not through, I don't know, looting? Well, guess what? Hobby Lobby bought over 5,000 illegally looted artifacts. You see, after the American invasion of Iraq in 2003, the country was left in complete disarray, and looters quickly began to pillage Iraq's archaeological sites and museums, selling the stolen artifacts to dealers on the black market. These items would then resurface outside the country, their shady origins left unquestioned by future buyers. We know that some looters were just local civilians just trying to make money to feed their families. However, others have been connected to more malicious organizations. In 2011, U.S. Custom agents seized several shipments of Hobby Lobby's artifacts, after correctly suspecting that they had originally been acquired through illegal means. Now, it is, debatable if the parties involved were aware of the illicit origins of these artifacts, but let's just say that they had been, accidentally mislabeled in custom declarations as ceramic and clay tile samples from Turkey and Israel, and not Iraq or the United Arab Emirates. Whoops. Archaeologists have since determined that several of the pieces Hobby Lobby purchased originally came from the National Museum of Iraq, which was rather violently ransacked less than a decade prior. The United States government prosecuted Hobby Lobby for the scandal, and in 2017 the company made a settlement, returning more than 5,500 artifacts to Iraq and having to pay a $3 million fine. Cats domesticated themselves. This is a popular theory on how wild cats were domesticated into house pets. They did so themselves. When early human farmers began to create food stores for their excess crops, it attracted mice and other pests. Cats, drawn by the high concentration of easy prey, began to live near human houses, until gradually over time, cats learned to live with us, and we just kind of let them hang out. The original dark-skinned Europeans. Several genetic studies on prehistoric human remains in Europe have revealed that several of the earliest Europeans looked very different when compared to the Europeans of today. Cheddar Man, for example, was a 9,000-year-old man in England who, according to genetics, possessed dark skin, dark hair, and light-colored eyes.
With Fargo, your virtual assistant from Wells Fargo, you can quickly know what you spend on things like food.
Fargo, what did I spend on groceries this month?
Hey, Dad, can the guys stay for dinner?
No.
Learn more at wellsfargo.com/getfargo.
El Gigante. El Gigante is the name given to the largest moai, or Easter Island head, ever constructed. However, it was never lifted or transported from its original form, due to the sheer impracticality of its size. Mickey Mouse Pre-Columbian Car. The wheel and axle are often regarded as one of the earliest and most essential inventions to humanity, as they make transportation, especially over long distances, much easier. However, in some regions, like in Mesoamerica, it appears that wheels and axles never gained as much prominence. Oh, the Mesoamericans invented them, but appear to have only used them for kids' toys, never
Voilà.
regular wagons or chariots. The reasons for this are unclear, but it appears it might have something to do with the fact that Mesoamerica lacked large domesticated animals to be used as beasts of burden to pull said inventions, so there was little practical use for them. Green Sahara. There was a period in prehistory where much of the Sahara Desert, one of the most inhospitable places on Earth, was not a sandy wasteland, but once a lush and wet grassland. Evidence of this period exists in prehistoric rock art, showing that giraffes, rhinos, elephants, and other animals once lived in this region. People swam in freshwater lakes and had thriving communities here, but they died out or moved elsewhere once the desert sands crept in. Ancient trade. Several archaeological finds have revealed that the world of the past was surprisingly much more interconnected than often thought. Although it was difficult for a single person to travel far from home in these times, objects could travel great distances through a complex network of trade. We found a Buddha figurine in medieval Scandinavia, ancient Greek tapestries depicting centaurs in China, and carvings of Hindu deities in Roman Pompeii. You could get goods thousands of miles from their original locations, but let's just say the shipping times were quite the long wait.
Can a derma roller reduce wrinkles and scars on your face like from acne? Let's play the cap game. The derma roller creates thousands of micropunctures on your skin, and that stimulates collagen, not cap. Using a derma roller on wrinkles can reduce them, not cap. Using a derma roller on scars can also reduce them, like from acne, but never use it on active acne. Can a derma roller reduce wrinkles and scars?
Prehistoric shark attack. The remains of this 3,000-year-old Japanese hunter-gatherer show that he had been attacked by either a tiger or great white shark at some point. Neolithic gummy bear. This amber amulet was found in a Polish bog. Its provenience can't really be attested, but it seems like it was dropped by a prehistoric hunter sometime during the Neolithic period. Also looks really, tasty. Wooden ship underneath the World Trade Center. After the September 11th attacks on the World Trade Center in New York, a massive construction effort was made to rebuild the destroyed area of the city. In 2010, an excavation site revealed that 20 feet below the New York City street level was the intact hull of a wooden ship dated to the 1700s. Pygmy mammoth in Egypt. There's a mural in an Egyptian tomb, the Rekhmere tomb, that seems to depict a small hairy elephant on a leash. There is a kind of fringe theory that the animal depicted is not an elephant, but a woolly mammoth. Although not entirely impossible, this probably isn't the case. As per my previous comment, 4,000 years ago, a Babylonian administrator wrote a complaint on a cuneiform tablet that reads, "I am not getting water for my sesame field. The sesame will die. Don't tell me later you did not write to me. The sesame is visibly dying. Evie il Abraham, that sesame will die, and I have warned you. Are you lifting, son?" refers to the infamous Bybon stone, a large block of granite found near Olympia, Greece, and dating to the 6th century BC. The stone has been engraved, presumably by a man named Bybon, with an inscription that reads, "Bybon, son of Fola, has lifted me over his head with one hand." Can we just take a moment to appreciate how Bybon wrote his inscription in the first-person perspective of the stone? Viking was a job description. An extensive genetic study of Viking Age remains revealed that the quote-unquote Vikings were an incredibly genetically diverse group, and not the necessarily homogeneous people that they were often thought of. They came from all over Europe, and it is perhaps better thought of as a job description, like pirate or mercenary, rather than an ethnic group. Anfim. In the city of Novgorod in Russia, archaeologists found the spelling homework of a 7-year-old medieval child named Anfim. Anfim was obviously disinterested in his homework as he doodled all over it. I took a deeper dive into this story in a previous video, so you should check that out. Caligula's coffee table. In the 1st century AD, the notorious Roman Emperor Caligula ordered the construction of 2 of the largest wooden ships ever built in antiquity. These pleasure barges were some of the most expensive and technologically advanced of their day.
These super shoppers get up high quality and down low prices. Hey supers, fresh for everyone.
And were said to host the emperor's lavish parties and orgies. Caligula's fancy ships eventually sunk to the bottom of Lake Nemi, where they remained for almost 2,000 years. In the 1920s, however, Italian dictator Benito Mussolini ordered the lake be drained and the records of the ships recovered. The 2 Nemi ships were successfully raised and eventually housed in their own museum. But in 1944, an Allied attack resulted in a fire that eventually burned down the museum. Sadly, almost completely destroying the remains of the original ships in the process. Little managed to survive. That was until 2017, when a New York attorney's office confiscated a mosaic panel from a private collector in New York City. The artifact turned out to be a Roman mosaic used to decorate the floor of one of the Nemi ships. Surviving the fire, it had been sold by an Italian aristocratic family to antiquity dealers in America. The owner of the mosaic apparently had no idea how special it was, and was using it for years as a coffee table. Knowing what Caligula probably did on that ship, I just hope they wiped it down a little before they used it. It's ritual. It refers to the tendency for archaeologists to explain something like an artifact or burial custom as ritual, which basically means that we don't know what the heck this thing is or what it was used for. It's kind of a vague catch-all term that really means nothing in the end. Brushing your teeth can be considered ritual and a whole bunch of other stuff. Mormonism. The religion of Mormonism has this kind of weird relationship with archaeology. The founder of Mormonism, Joseph Smith, was a bit of an amateur archaeologist himself. In 1823, Smith claimed to have discovered, with help of an angel, an ancient book of gold plates buried on a hill in Manchester, New York. Smith claimed that they were the remains of a bygone civilization of Israelites called the Nephites, who crossed the Atlantic Ocean in ancient times. Now, with the hindsight of modern archaeology and genetics, this claim of an ancient transatlantic crossing is simply not supported by the evidence. But it is possible that Smith might have actually uncovered the remains of a very real Native American Mississippian culture, which existed across the eastern part of North America from 800 to 1600 AD. These Native Americans did know a bit of metalworking and crafted decorative copper plates with glyphs and design. Perhaps Smith found a few of these copper plates and misidentified them as Israelites. The Schliemann level. This level is devoted to the story of one of the founders of modern archaeology. The man this archaeologists really loved to hate, Heinrich Schliemann. And oh boy, was this guy wild. Heinrich Schliemann was a German businessman in the mid to late 1800s who had a passion for the works of the ancient Greek poet Homer, and used his extensive wealth to finance his hobby of digging up ancient sites across the Aegean. Schliemann's lifelong dream was to hunt down the legendary city of Troy, mentioned in Homer's Iliad and the Odyssey. At the time, this was seen as a bit of a fool's errand. Up until the late 19th century, Troy and the Trojan War was largely thought of as a fantasy or a myth with no historical basis. Schliemann disagreed and believed that the war was an actual historical event, and the city was at one point a real location. After some sleuthing, he identified the site of Hisarlik, in what is now Turkey, as an historical story, and began excavating it in the 1870s. With the most delicate of archaeological methods, dynamite. The crazy thing is that he was right. Hisarlik is seen by modern archaeologists as the historical Troy. Unfortunately for us, however, Schliemann is the one who found it first, and his explosive methods were devastating, destroying much of the important historical context of Hisarlik forever. For example, we now know that the soil level that Schliemann identified as the Trojan War was too old to be Homer's Troy, and in order for him to access this older level, Schliemann had to recklessly remove the younger layers above it, effectively obliterating all traces of the real Trojan War in the process. Schliemann kept few if any records or maps of his excavations too, so he took little care to document the locations of objects or finds. He also had this tendency to claim any artifact he found must have belonged to someone historically significant, calling things like the treasures of King Priam or the mask of Agamemnon, based on absolutely nothing. He literally just went, yeah, sure, that sounds right. Source? I made it all up. But wait, it gets worse. Schliemann smuggled several of the more valuable Troy treasures out of Anatolia, and the Ottoman Empire only knew about this because Schliemann left his wife, Sophia, wear the priceless 4,000-year-old
Ja, Dario! Man!
parties and stuff, which is like, what?
Ja, nothing.
Upon learning this, the Ottoman government understandably banned Schliemann from digging in their country and tried to sue him for the gold. But he just fled to another country and dug up the ancient city of Mycenae in Greece instead. All agree Schliemann was pretty bad. Pretty bad. Even for the time, when the field of archaeology was still in its very infancy. The amount of damage to science Schliemann did through his needlessly careless methods is immeasurable, to say the least. We can never get the knowledge he destroyed back. Schliemann's story basically serves as the textbook example of how not to do archaeology. Oh, Schliemann, you rapscallion, you...
We're at Once Upon a Wish Party, the ultimate Disney experience for the Wish family.
Kings of Ur refers to a rather obscure fresco at the Umayyad Caliphate site of Khuzra Amra. It is said to depict the 6 kings of the world, known at the time. The fresco is very damaged, so it's hard to say who all of them would have been. But of the ones we know, there was the Visigothic king of Hispania, Roderick, the Negus of the kingdom of Aksum, Najashi, an unnamed Byzantine emperor, and an unnamed Sasanian emperor. The identity of the last 2 kings is a subject of much debate, but they are speculated to be a Chinese emperor and a king of India, but this is still very much conjecture. Bronze Age crop top. This is a reference to the Ekvet girl's well-preserved clothing. This Bronze Age girl was buried in a wooden coffin in what is now Denmark. Her surviving 3,400-year-old clothes consist of a loose bodice that left her waist bare and a short string skirt with a large decorative disc. A bit of a Bronze Age waifu. Arabic coin for the Pope refers to a rather unique gold coin minted by the English king Oscar of Mercia. In 774 AD, the coin appears to have been a blatant copy of a coin struck by a Roman caliph, with the word Alpha Rex awkwardly added in. The engraver who produced it tried their best to copy the original Arabic inscription, but obviously had no understanding of the language, so the text contains many grammatical errors and typos. Why this bizarre coin was made in the first place is unclear, but one theory posits that it was a gift to the Vatican Pope, which is kind of funny when you realize that the Arabic letters on it read, "There is no God but Allah alone." I'm guessing that probably wouldn't have gone over well with the Christian Pope. Medieval panties. In 2008, archaeologists discovered a secret chamber in Langberg Castle, Austria. Inside was a hidden stash of clothes dating to around the 1400s. Among these garments were some of the best preserved medieval underwear, including 4 linen bras. This was a bit of a surprise, as it had been previously thought that female bras like these, with 2 separate supported cups, wouldn't be invented until much later in the Victorian era. Discovery provided, I quote, "a missing link in the history of women's underwear." Also, it is pretty funny that the linen panties found in the chamber probably belonged not to a woman, but a dude. Hey, I get it, I'm more of a douche guy myself. Hair gel. The Cloneykiven man is a well-preserved Iron-Age frog body found in Ireland. Analysis of his body showed that the man liked to style his hair using tree resin as a primitive type of hair gel. Coffin juice. When the so-called Black Sarcophagus in Alexandria, Egypt was opened in 2018, news outlets reported that it was filled with bones floating in a soup of red dark sludge. The story and its accompanying photos quickly captured the attention of the public. In maybe not the best of ways, many online petitions circulated around demanding that the archaeologists allow people to drink the coffin juice. The juice in the coffin was actually sewage from Alexandria's underground drains, so it is in my humble opinion that you probably shouldn't drink it. Pre-contact dogs. Prior to European contact, the indigenous peoples of North and South America had their own unique dog breeds, found nowhere else in the world. However, aside from Chihuahuas and a handful of other breeds, all these dogs became extinct after European contact, likely due to disease and competition with European dogs. I also did an entire video on these guys, so check that out. Boskop Man. In 1913, the fossil remains of a prehistoric human were discovered in South Africa, and according to anthropologists at the time, it apparently had a massive brain. The Boskop Man, as it was later known, had a calculated cranial capacity between 1,700 and 2,000 cc. By comparison, the average human today has a cranial capacity around 1,400 to 1,500 cc. Now, re-examining the story, it is hard to ascertain the truth of this claim. The fossil was highly fragmentary, so I would chalk this unusual cranial capacity to researcher error. Olmec heads were actually thrown. It appears that at least some of the famous Olmec heads of Central America were not, at least originally, meant to be heads. At least 2 of the colossal craniums show the unmistakable signs of being recarved. They originally seemed to have been stone chairs or thrones prior to being sculpted. Star Wars archaeology. For decades, people have been searching in some of the most remote parts of the globe, not for the remains of a lost civilization, but for artifacts from a galaxy far, far away. You see, after filming the iconic Star Wars film franchise, the behind-the-scenes crew for several of the movies apparently just left many of the original props at their filming locations, where they sat abandoned for years. Enthusiastic movie fans have tracked down several of these artifacts, from the charred ruins of Uncle Owen in Aunt Beru's house, to the fiberglass skeleton of the Krayt Dragon in the deserts of Tunisia, to the fragmentary wreckage of Jabba's sail barge in Buttercup Valley, Arizona. Unfortunately, many of these unique pieces of film history have either been destroyed by the elements, or scavenged by locals and resold to private collectors. The Stain. There was once an ancient Greek statue called the Aphrodite of Kindos. It was supposedly so attractive and lifelike that at night young men would sneak into the temple that Taoiseach and, let's just say, used it inappropriately. According to legends, this happened so often that over time a dark stain became visible on the statue, Now, we can't verify the truth of this claim because although we have numerous known copies, the original statue has not been found, and most likely it never will. But who knows, the statue in its possibly legendary stain might still be out there. Boba Fett Mayas. The helmets of Mayan ritual boxers look a lot like Mandalorian helmets from Star Wars. These boxers use giant spiky conch shells as boxing gloves in their very bloody sport. The Boiler Boys. There is an obscure and ancient grave in what is now Germany that commemorates two brothers named Saluda and Regretto. They were Persian cataphracts, or heavily armored knights. Soldiers like these were often demeaningly called boiler boys because they tended to boil in the sun under all that metal plate. These particular boiler boys apparently fought on the Roman side against barbarians in Germany, circa 235 AD. The two brothers appear to have originally come from all the way in Mesopotamia and served under the Sasanian king Ardashir. They were likely mercenaries who sold their services to whoever needed strong fighters. Under Ardashir, they might have traveled as far as the Indus before serving under Rome in the defense of its borders on the Rhine. This simple grave, in truth, tells the story of two brothers who traveled the whole width of the known world together and fought in dozens of brutal and bloody battles, only to die in a swamp so far from home and fighting for an empire they probably didn't particularly care for.
Getting everyone in your home on the same page about energy use is hard, so we're making it easier. XL Energy offers programs and services like a home energy assessment and smart thermostat rewards, plus rebates to help reduce the cost of energy upgrades in your home. We make energy decisions easier. Who gets to control the remote? That's up to you.
Fun times in Pompeii. This refers to an image of a cast belonging to a man killed in the eruption of Mount Vesuvius in 79 AD, originally uploaded on Pompeii's Instagram. It sounds super weird when I say it. This image started to circulate online with people claiming that the man was, having a fun time the moment he died. As it turns out, no, he's not giving it one last stroke before the end. The man probably just ended up in this position because his arms and legs flexed after death due to the intense heat of the volcano's pyroclastic flow. Sweet potatoes. The common narrative we are taught in school is that North and South America and their native inhabitants were isolated from the rest of the world for tens of thousands of years, and it wasn't until Christopher Columbus crossed the Atlantic Ocean in 1492 that this isolation was broken. However, something is overturning this view. Something you wouldn't expect. Sweet potatoes. Sweet potatoes are a crop native to the Americas and were cultivated by Native Americans for many thousands of years. Interestingly though, archaeological evidence has shown that sweet potatoes were being cultivated in some of the very distant Pacific Islands since the 1000s AD. Polynesians on the Cook Islands, Easter Islands, Hawaii, and even New Zealand were growing sweet potatoes centuries before Christopher Columbus or any other European knew about the Americas. How these sweet potatoes made it all the way from Central or South America to these islands in the Pacific Ocean is a bit of a mystery. These potatoes are some of the strongest pieces of evidence that there might have been actual interactions and trade between Polynesians and South Americans long before European contact. On top of this, the word for sweet potato in Polynesian languages and South American languages are suspiciously similar, suggesting a shared origin. Perhaps some canoes from the Polynesian islands, like Easter Island, traveled to South America, or perhaps the dispersal of this crop occurred naturally, and the language thing is a weird coincidence. The point is we don't know exactly, and the whole trans-Pacific sweet potato debate remains as this kind of unresolved mystery. Hammurabi's shoe return. This refers to one of the Mari letters, a series of clay tablets material documenting written conversations sent and received by the king Zimri-Lin. A rather curious letter records an interaction between King Zimri-Lin and the king of Babylon, Hammurabi. Yes, that Hammurabi. In the letter, it states that Hammurabi received a pair of Cretan leather boots or sandals as a gift from Zimri-Lin, but Hammurabi returned them. These boots would have been a rather fancy and expensive gift, especially to transport so far. So it begs the question, why did Hammurabi return them? Were they too small or too big for his feet? As historian Eric Klein points out, he could have at least rejected them. Had to do with him. Refers to the Gwynol Lioness, a supposedly 5,000-year-old Mesopotamian statue allegedly found near Baghdad, Iraq. It is better known as the most expensive antiquity to be sold in an auction. In 2007, it was sold for $57.2 million. Why? I have no idea, don't ask me. Somebody must really like their 5,000-year-old jacked furries. Throwing a king's arm in the trash. Possibly the oldest royal remains ever found was a skeletonized arm found in the tomb of King Jared by Egyptologist Flinders Petrie. Petrie gave the arm to fellow Egyptologist Emil Bruch, who supposedly promptly threw it away, thinking it was too bad to be used in the future. Saber-toothed lips. Okay, this refers to a Paleolithic statuette from the prehistoric French site of Itsuitz. The statuette has been lost since at least the early 20th century, so all we have of it are drawings based on the original. It depicts some kind of big cat, but what type of big cat is a point of contention. Most think it is a representation of a caged lion, but a small minority have posited that it might represent a saber-toothed cat, specifically a Homotheria, which is definitely the more intriguing possibility, as it would be the only eyewitness depiction of such a creature while it still lived. If this is in fact the case, it raises another question. Why are there no saber teeth? This oddity has spawned a theory that, contrary to most pop culture depictions, saber-toothed cats had fleshy lips that actually hid their long fangs in life. But this is a bit of an extrapolation based on pretty tenuous evidence. Cursed grilled cheese. This refers to a pretty funny Tumblr thread where users wanted to use the combined ingredients of the world's oldest cheese, a lump of 2,000-year-old butter, and pieces of 14,500-year-old bread from Jordan on an ancient non-stick frying pan discovered in Italy to make the world's oldest grilled cheese. The lost giant Aztec snake statue. This refers to a very enigmatic and poorly understood artifact. In 1824, the English naturalist William Bullock held a museum exhibition at the Egyptian Hall in London, England, titled Ancient Mexico. This exhibit primarily consisted of Aztec artifacts acquired by Bullock, such as authentic pottery and codices. However, the main features of ancient Mexico were several full-scale plaster casts of Aztec statues. These casts being based on the stone originals all the way back in Mexico. 2 contemporary sketches exist of this exhibition, and we can see that almost all the statues are known to us. All but one, that is. The most eye-catching of the plaster statues is this incredibly large and fearsome serpent with a man's head in its mouth. Suspiciously, there are no references to this giant Aztec snake statue outside of Bullock's exhibit, and the original it was said to be based on has not been found. Some have said it could have been straight up fabricated or invented by Bullock, but this seems unlikely to me. We know that pretty much everything else of it was based on real, authentic Aztec specimens, many of which we still have, all except this one. Even the plaster cast appears to have gone missing, as contemporary sources report it was sold to a private collector after the exhibit ended, never to be seen again. But, how does something this big get lost or misplaced? It's all very weird and crazy that this huge badass snake statue has straight up disappeared from history, and no one knows any details about it or where it went. With hope, it's still collecting dust in the basement of some old English manor right now, just waiting to be uncovered.
Concha de tu madre, boludo. Mira, perfecto, boludo. No entiendo, men.
Massive cookie jars.
Claro, se me fue
This
justo,
refers to
boludo.
the plain of jars
Estoy agarrando 4, men.
scattered across the valleys and
Presta atención,
the
pedazo de otario.
plateau are thousands of stone jars.
Qué otario,
Some
boludo.
small and some truly gigantic. They were constructed by an unknown prehistoric between 1240 and 660 BC for an even more mysterious purpose. Some human skeletons were buried around the jars, while others have been found within them. A few show signs of cremation, maybe the jars were used for cremation. Most of the jars are not lacking any inscriptions or pictures. All it is, save one, which has a pictogram of a frog-like humanoid on it. The plain of jars are truly an archaeological mystery. They obviously served a religious or spiritual function to bygone people, but we can't really say much beyond that. Indiana Jones's gold idol is fake. In the first Indiana Jones film, the fictional archaeologist grabs a gold idol from an abandoned temple somewhere in South America. This prop is actually based on the real Dumbarton Oaks birthing figure. This figurine is said to be a piece of pre-contact art depicting an Aztec goddess giving birth. Now, the Dumbarton Oaks figure has come under scrutiny, and it very well might be a clever fake. The provenience or origins of the artifact cannot be confirmed because it first appears on the shelves of an antiquity store in Paris, France. Additionally, recent microscopic analysis of the artifact have shown that the incisions and drill holes on it were probably made by modern tools, not ancient ones. This is an incredibly similar situation to the infamous crystal skulls reportedly discovered in Mesoamerica. Stone Age, personal misogyny. There are several interestingly shaped stone artifacts found in prehistoric sites all over the world. Some were probably simply ceremonial or artistic in their purposes, while others seem to have been used for something else by our early ancestors. Yeah, I'm glad she's wearing gloves. Venus figurines are prehistoric selfies. This refers to theories presented by anthropologists McCoy and McDermott to explain the puzzling Venus figurines, a collection of Stone Age statuettes with large breasts and hips, and often lack heads or faces. The scientists suggest that the Venuses look this way because they were made by prehistoric women looking down at their own bodies. According to them, without mirrors, early humans had to rely on their first-person perspective to describe themselves. And the reason why many of the figurines lack heads or faces is because the artists did not have mirrors to see their own faces. To top it off, McDermott's paper had these really great visual experiments that essentially consisted of pictures taken from a woman's first-person perspective, looking down at her own nude body. Other anthropologists have criticized this interpretation because prehistoric humans would have obviously had access to streams and puddles, which could have been used as mirrors. The last Makiwatl. The Makiwatl of Mesoamerica was one of the most badass weapons in history. It essentially consisted of a wooden club held in one hand, with several obsidian blades as sharp as steel razors embedded in its sides. It was said to be so sharp that some Spanish conquistadors reported it could cut the head off a horse with one strike, although this might be a bit of an exaggeration. The Makiwatl was the choice weapon of countless Aztec, Mayan, and Toltec elite warriors for centuries. So it might be a little shocking to learn that up until recently, it was not a single surviving Makiwatl dating to the pre-Columbian era. Oh, there were replicas made centuries after European contact, but no authentic specimens from before. The last pre-Columbian Makiwatl was apparently housed in the Royal Armory in Madrid after Hernán Cortés sent it back to Spain as a prize of war, following his conquest of the Aztec Empire. Now, this is where things get a bit hazy and messy. The Makiwatl in question appears in a catalog of the armory in 1837, and in a photo taken
Pero ¿por qué me matas tan rápido? Tienes segunda ronda, man.
Japanese samurai armor and a Persian shield. And based on this image, the Madrid Makiwatl looks way longer than any previously known one. To me, it almost looks like Guts' Golden Age arc sword. Some experts have suggested that this specimen in the Madrid Royal Armory represented a rare two-handed version of the weapon, almost like a European longsword. The armory, along with the unusual last Makiwatl, burned down in 1884, meaning this elusive two-handed variant has been lost to time. Some have suggested that it might have served a purely ceremonial purpose, but with no artifact to examine, it's hard to say. Thankfully for us, however, recently a second, and maybe even a third authentic pre-Columbian Makiwatl was unveiled within the Museum of the Templo Mayor in Mexico, bringing the number of known surviving Makiwatls back up to one, and maybe even two, since 1884. And there you have it, the archaeology iceberg. I hope you enjoyed and learned something new. Tell me what you thought of some of these obscure and weird pieces of trivia. I just have a love and a passion for this unique and diverse field of science. It's amazing how much hard work archaeologists around the world have done to advance our understanding of the past. Definitely feel free to share your strange niche archaeology factoids, because I obviously couldn't talk about them all on this list, and I had to leave a lot of stuff out. Okay, thank you so much for watching this installment of Trey's Explainer. I hope to see you next time.
You take your Built apparel everywhere you go. Have you ever thought about what Built can save you?
Hey, you're watching my official compilation channel, but if you want to see my newest videos as soon as they're uploaded, check out my main channel, Chat History. Alright, enjoy the video. Spooky history stories. If you're well-versed in American history, then you know the story of formerly alive President Abraham Lincoln's big night out on the town in 1865. Even if you're familiar with the historical artwork around the matter, you would ask yourself, who the heck are these other people? You know Lincoln, sure, and of course the guy using Lincoln's skull as target practice is John Wilkes Booth. But also accompanying the president that night were his wife, Mary, close friend and Union Army Major Henry R. Rathbone, and his fiancée, Clara Harris. Lincoln and the gang were out celebrating the recent Union victory of the American Civil War and were seated in a private viewing box to the right of the stage in Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C. What do you think of the play, dear? Just then, Confederate sword leader John Wilkes Booth entered the booth and took aim, blasting the president point blank in the head with a .44 caliber lead ball from his single-shot Derringer pistol. At the sound of the gunshot, Rathbone spun around to see Lincoln collapse in his chair with Booth standing in a cloud of smoke. He immediately leapt from his seat and charged the assassin, but Booth came well prepared. In the struggle, Booth was able to equip a dagger and severely slash Rathbone's arm before leaping from the box onto the stage. Right before jumping, Rathbone was able to grab Booth's coat, causing Booth to lose his balance and eat shit, fudging up his leg in the process. Despite being in a packed theater of witnesses and bystanders, Booth evaded capture for 12 days. However, his plan was successful as President Lincoln died from his injuries just 9 hours after the fatal game of tag. Rathbone, who passed out due to blood loss but eventually recovered from his injuries, personally placed the weight of the president's death on his shoulders. He believed he should have been able to prevent the assassination, and because of this, he bore immeasurable guilt every day of his life, absolutely destroying his mental well-being to the point of insanity. After resigning from the military 5 years later, he struggled to find work until eventually given a consul position in Germany by President Arthur. Rathbone's now wife Clara had hoped that the change of scenery would do him some good. Rathbone's mental health continued to spiral, resulting in him lashing out at his young children and violently threatening Clara. After 13 years of mental deterioration, the breaking point had finally been reached. On December 23, 1883, Rathbone attacked his children in a fit of madness in their home. Clara had rushed to protect her children, but was fatally shot and stabbed by her husband. Instead of continuing his onslaught, he turned the knife on himself, stabbing himself in the chest 5 times. Despite the failed seppuku attempt, Rathbone survived his wounds, with police finding him covered in blood, claiming that there were people hidden in the walls of his home, whispering to him. He was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife. During the trial, he was officially declared insane by court doctors and committed to an asylum where he died 28 years later. Henry Howard Holmes was an American con artist and the U.S.'s first documented serial killer. Born the lesser-cool named Herman Mudgett, Holmes attended the University of Michigan's Department of Medicine and Surgery in 1882, where he allegedly would accompany his professor in various grave-robbing activities as a way to supply the school with fresh bodies for examination and dissection. It was here that Holmes developed a slight obsession with death, and seldom does such an obsession lead to good things. After graduating medical school in 1884 and being upgraded to Dr. H.H. Holmes, he moved out to Chicago to work in a drugstore, which he eventually bought outright from the owner. British drugs. The proceeds from that store helped to fund his newfound hobby that would soon evolve into something much more sinister. Holmes drew up plans for a hotel, one designed to be a death trap for all who entered. Not the best business model for return customers, but hey. Several contractors and architects were put on the job with a steady rotation of firing and hiring. Now, it's believed that this constant turnover kept everyone from knowing his true design intentions, with no one designer knowing the full scale of the operation at any given time. When it was fully built, the hotel had 3 floors, with the first one being mainly retail and including a new drugstore. Holmes used the hotel to accommodate travelers during the upcoming Chicago World's Fair in 1893, which attracted millions of people to the area. Now, according to legend, The hotel contained secret rooms, trick hallways, and trapdoors and torture chambers throughout. It was in this hotel that Holmes would allegedly trap and torture his victims, eventually selling their bodies to the local medical school as a way to satisfy his macabre desires while still making bank. During the World's Fair, Holmes would charisma check dozens of wealthy women to spend the night in the hotel for rest and relaxation, but they would never be seen again. It is believed that as many as 50 women went missing during the World's Fair, all linked to what Holmes would later call his murder castle. In August of the same year, the third floor of the hotel caught fire. While no one was injured, the fire destroyed most of the third floor, but Holmes had an ace up his sleeve: multiple insurance policies. But, like insurance companies do, they refused to pay out and accused Holmes of setting the fire himself and engaging in insurance fraud. Holmes, obviously angered by such accusations, quickly skedaddled out of Chicago. And over the following years, he continued to dabble in insurance fraud with his friend Benjamin Pitezel. For his next trick, Holmes had suffocated Pitezel with chloroform and burned his unconscious body for a life insurance payout. But what's even worse is that through extreme coercion and manipulation, Holmes had convinced Pitezel's widowed wife to place 3 of her 5 children into his custody. And over the years, he would murder all 3. Holmes had forced the 2 older children, 13-year-old Alice and 9-year-old Nellie, into a trunk, drilled a hole through it, and plugged it with a gas line, suffocating them. He then buried their bodies in a cellar in his house. As for the third child, 7-year-old Howard, Holmes drugged the boy, dismembered, and burned his body, with only some teeth and bones being the identifying factors. Eventually, the children's remains were discovered, leading to Holmes' arrest and subsequent conviction of the Pitezel murders. He was sentenced to death and hanged in 1896, but not before confessing to over 200 murders thanks to his murder castle. But Holmes was regarded as a habitual liar, and experts believe that there was only enough evidence to link him to 9 murders. Still a high count,
Qué retardado que soy, hermano.
that Holmes had claimed. As for the murder castle, it is confirmed that these stories about the design and the use of the building were widely sensationalized and over-exaggerated by local media. Sucks from a horror standpoint, but still makes a good story nonetheless, right?
You know what they say? You get out what you put in.
Take a look at this face. Seem familiar at all? If not, then you're useless to me if I start joking. Anyway, this is a death mask, a plaster casting of the face of an unidentified woman who was pulled from the River Seine in Paris in the late 1880s. She became known as Le Cagneau de la Seine, or the unknown woman of the Seine. After being fished out of the French River, her body was placed in the Paris morgue, which, at the time, put nameless corpses on full display for the sake of identification by the general public who happened to be passing by. Oh hey kids, look, it's Grandma! Oh. Because of this strange but effective method, the morgue became a popular tourist and public gathering spot, often referred to as the only free theater in Paris. This particular woman, however, was a bit of an oddity. Medical examination showed no visible wounds or signs of a struggle, so it was concluded that her death was self-inflicted, with her age being estimated at just 16 years old. But it was her calm, serene expression that caught the attention of a pathologist at the morgue. Since he couldn't take a picture to make it last longer, he decided to instead cast a plaster death mask on her face as a way to immortalize her. Creepily enough, but also to no surprise, many Parisians thought that having the face of a dead woman in their house to be the coolest thing since sliced baguettes. So countless copies of the death mask were made. From an artistic standpoint, many interpretations claim that the young woman's demeanor expresses a calm control over death, being accepting of its inevitability rather than fear. From a non-artistic viewpoint, you have some dead girl's face hanging on your wall. Over the years, her face had inspired several literary works, pieces of art, and even fashion. But where have you seen her face before? Well, believe it or not, chances are you've actually unknowingly given her mouth to mouth. Because hers is the face of the CPR training doll, which is used in almost all CPR training courses worldwide since 1960. Sure, that might be creepy, but at least it's thematically appropriate. World War I was absolutely brutal. It was the forefront of many new innovations in warfare like tanks, heavy machine guns, and manned aircraft. All effective technologies developed for the sake of boosting your own kill count. But another, more sinister tactic was soon deployed onto the battlefield: chemical weapons. Perhaps the most widely used was mustard gas, but others were used too. For instance, chlorine gas, a yellow-green gas which sure enough looks like a stereotypical funny fart cloud, but packs a lethal punch. This story begins in September of 1914, where German soldiers were tasked with taking the Russian-occupied Auschwitz fortress. It was constructed as a Russian Empire border defensive structure against German attack. And boy, was it good at its job. German Empire units had repeatedly tried to penetrate the fortress, but were told no through heavy retaliatory gunfire and artillery. Despite facing multiple defeats, stubborn German soldiers refused to give up so easily. 3 assaults were conducted on the fortress over the course of a year. The first saw German infantry losses of about 6,000, while Russian forces only suffered 139. The second assault saw a continued bombardment on the fortress by German artillery, but Russian soldiers didn't budge. This caused several month-long standoffs, which eventually resulted in German retreat. However, the third assault was to be the one to huff and puff and blow the fortress down. Returning to the fortress in August of 1915, the German forces now had fresh soldiers, even heavier artillery, and multiple canisters of chlorine gas. On the defensive side, the Russian line was only 900 strong, but they still took their chances against the impossible odds. After waiting several hours for favorable wind conditions, German soldiers bombarded the fortress with their deadly gas to flush out the enemy. The Russian soldiers, unfortunately, had no suitable protection against the gas and had to improvise, covering their faces with the best thing they could come up with: rags, soap, and piss. To no surprise, this proved ineffective. Soldiers were severely incapacitated by the gas, and now they smell like piss. As a quick science lesson, when chlorine gas is inhaled, it reacts with the residual moisture in your body, forming hydrochloric acid, which starts to corrode your internal organs. In short, causes big ouchies on the inside. With this mechanism of action being well known, the Germans were certain of their victory and began to infiltrate the fortress, but were met with a horrific sight. Despite suffering in complete agony, covered in blisters and coughing up lungs and blood, the Russian soldiers still stood their ground and continued fighting. The German troops, of course, shied their hosen at the sight of the seemingly undead Russians and fled from the fortress in a complete panic, with some even stumbling into barbed wire in the process. The rest of the German troops immediately hightailed it out of there. Although successful, most of the Russian defense died from the gas. Those who did survive barely got by the skin of their whatever they had left. Sadly, Russian troops preemptively demolished most of the fortress as Germans began closing in for a 4th time later that month.
World champion Lolo Jones has dominated the track and conquered the bobsled. Now she's ready to take on pickleball, puppy yoga, and hiking. This off-season, she's discovering new ways to get moving, with help from Sierra's amazing brands at incredible prices.
Best workout ever. Sierra, let's get moving.
Just as a quick warning, I'm going to be showing some graphic medical photos of real syphilis patients. So, if you don't want to see that, click away now. There you go. Usually when you hear the phrase Italian Renaissance, you think of high-class society, revolutionary innovation, and lots of statues of dudes with big dicks out. Well, allow me to throw a wrench in that perception by introducing you to the concept of syphilis zombies. Syphilis? Like the guy with the boulder? No, silly. Syphilis. Like the STD. Quick backstory. In 1494, the King of Naples, Ferdinand I, died of bronchial cancer. If his name sounds familiar, it's because he's one of those evil kings that I covered in a previous video, so you can check that out if you haven't. Link. Anyway, Freddie's son, Alfonso II, took his daddy's throne, but was quickly put in a state of check by French King Guy Charles VIII, who claimed that he had claim to the throne because of his noble Angevin bloodline. Or so he claimed. Little Alfonso was like, how about you just take Milan instead? Your lawn? No, Milan. Well, why would I want your lawn? I hate Milan. Are you serious right now? After some clarification, King Charles agreed, and with 30-some thousand soldiers, he invaded Italy, took over Milan, but felt unsatisfied. Oh, sweet. Charles took Milan. Oh, he's heading this way, too. Why is he heading this way? Naples was also taken. With such a successful campaign through the peninsula, the French army, which consisted of Spanish, Swiss, Flemish, and even Italian soldiers, decided to celebrate. And you bet your sweet balls that meant women and alcohol were involved in medically inadvisable quantities. When you have a bunch of people from all over Europe quite literally come together in one city, there's going to be some interesting results. This one was syphilis. Actually, it was kind of like a super syphilis, as historians generally agreed that the strain that went around was much more severe than its modern cousin that we are more familiar with. That is the respiratory, of course. This meant that the disease was much more contagious with symptoms that were much more severe.